Real Shatter is kill, and that means mid-mobile gaming is back on the menu. It also means that metamobile gaming is also very much back on the menu, although it never really went off. So we're just going to start this out. We're going to frag some wyverns with the Japanese dart playing the little Dorito J7W1. This was one of those planes that was affected really badly by the real shatter mechanic. Now, if you're watching this from the future and you don't know what the real shatter mechanic is, basically War Thunder implemented realistic spalling for fragmentation shells, so that in theory the spalling pattern would be projected forward or at 45-degree angles or whatever, according to like the way it would work in real life, as opposed to the old system where it would go into the skin and just explode in a ball pattern. In theory, would work perfectly fine. In reality, it was poorly implemented. It was bugged so that your fragmentation basically like disappeared from the game. It meant that overnight cannons that had previously been incredibly good were incredibly bad, and this had pretty drastic effects on planes that didn't have like already outstanding performance. So the plane I'm flying right now, the F-44B, was not really one that was super negatively affected by real shatter, but it also meant that because it had less damage, that it went from 6.0, it went down to 5.7 in RB. It's currently 5.7 in simulator battles, and it went from being very, very good to being, it basically broke. I would argue that this plane is one of probably 5 or 6 planes in Sim that are completely busted. And because it's completely busted, you're going to be seeing a lot more of them in Sim than ever before. Basically, we are back to the good old days of Greek Air Force spamming the F-44B every day of the week, and just taking any shot. You have all of the ammo in the world. You don't have to hit a lot. The other guy has to avoid you. Your plane performance in this thing is basically better than everything else for all intents and purposes. Like, you are either faster than everything in the lobby and outturn most of it, or you just straight up outturn it. Like, on paper, this thing with the newer flight model, it does compress a little bit at high speeds. It is something that can be exploited, but overall the flight model in this thing, the performance, the guns, are just completely disgustingly busted. Like right there, like that was one shot. That was one shot, and that guy's dead. And because MG151s were not affected by real shatter, they didn't get buffed by any of the changes to real shatter either. So they are in exactly the same places they were before, which means if you're flying this thing, you're flying anything else, you have a good chance of tanking a couple MG151 rounds. Now, I just got hit with 1 or 2, and I'm combat ineffective, but this guy is still going to have to chase me in order to shoot me down. I have at least a limited range of like viable options, and if I hit him once, he's done. So while this has positive and negative implications for different planes, I would say the result is overwhelmingly positive. It also has implications for what constitutes viable playstyles. It means that your more aggressive players, your guys that like to go into the furball, if they have the good cannons, they can get kills more quickly. On the other hand, it means that they can be killed more quickly by other people in the furball, or they can be killed more quickly by dedicated boom and zoom players. It also means that your dedicated boom and zoom players should have an easier time killing things in one pass or stringing together multiple kills. So there's a lot of give and take there. I think it could also mean that for the guys that like to fly heavy fighters, the world just got a lot more dangerous for them, because the larger you are as a target, the more identifiable you are, the easier you are to hit, the more likely it is for even mediocre players to be able to shoot you down. I noticed this especially with like planes like the P-38. While they're like, the performance is really pretty acceptable on paper, the maneuverability is pretty good, just because that plane is rather large, recognizable, and fragile, you find yourself not doing nearly as well with it when you compare it to basically a similarly capable like single engine plane. That, and you compare it to something like the F-44B, and then it's like just not even a contest. It also means that planes that are relatively large, like the Dorner 335, they kind of rely on outrunning enemy players now because they're a large target and because cannons are more effective at longer ranges. It's going to close down some options for them, and even in like RB side of things, like the planes that same thing, Do 335 with an air spawn. You can no longer head on the entire lobby anymore because they can head on you back now, and but you get hit and you die. Now, outside your old school Metamobiles, like the F4U4B, really the biggest benefactor from this change is going to be planes like the J2M2. This is plane is a performance monster. It has the best climb rate of any 3.7. It's reasonably fast. It's as fast on the deck as a Yak 3, unless you want to get really technical, and it's like, oh yeah, it's 8 kilometers per hour slower. But the Yak 3 is all the way up at 4.7. This thing's down at 3.7. As soon in sim, as soon as you deploy the flaps, you're kind of not really worried about wing stalling, so it's relatively forgiving. Um, but previously with real Shatter, it was rather difficult to get more than like 3 kills per flyout. And because you have so much performance to work with, you can just kind of fly this thing any way you want to. You can use it as a boom and zoomer, you can use it as an energy fighter, or you can just go straight into the furball, and you're still going to outturn everything that's not Japanese or anything that's not like a Mark II Spitfire can outturn you, or like a F2A Buffalo. Like if one person isn't on a Buffalo, then yeah, you get a run for your money. But like you just have so much performance to work with, and now you have good guns to work with too. So it ends up being rather ridiculous. Then you couple it with a cheesy tactic like removing the canopy so you can just hear everything, especially in props, which just increases your situational awareness. And you go from a plane that's pretty busted in the performance category, but it kind of falls apart in the weapons category, just a plane that is completely busted. And that's kind of what we're seeing here. This is not the first game I've done with this since Real Shatter was changed. Like the first game I didn't record, but I got 7 kills in my first flyout. Like it's actually just kind of boring to play. But it's 3.7 in SB. In RB, it's going to be just as good. It's at 4.3, but it's at a BR where really nothing outside of like the XP50 is as busted as it is. And I would argue that this thing's more busted just because it's more intuitive to fly. Like you outturn everything, you outclimb everything, and you kind of outspeed everything that isn't just like a straight up American plane. It is rather ridiculous. And the real Shatter change also means that doing things like going directly head on with a P-47 goes from being a arguably 15-20% chance of a kill to a 25, or not a 25%, like a 50 to 75% chance. Like it's a lot more viable now. This guy here, I don't know why these guys do this. They see something and they just immediately turn with it. This is sim. This is the same thing as RB, but even with that hit in the head on, that didn't really do anything because that was probably the machine guns. We get a crit here, and he's still flying, but he's probably got some wing root damage. But boom, we're done. We just follow up. He's done. We're sitting at 84 rounds of cannon ammo, and we're chilling. We tanked a couple of his shots. He didn't tank ours. And we move further ahead into the game, and one of our friendlies is being trailed by an F4F Wildcat and an A6M0, the American one, a plane that is relatively popular in sim. Now, should we shoot the Wildcat first or the Zero? Well, we're going to shoot the Zero first just because he's probably the biggest threat. Just because he's the only thing that can reliably outturn us, and he's the only thing that's relatively scary. And as he kills our friendly, we kind of just flew in front of the F4F, but we're just going to use our speed. We're just going to spiral up, and he basically is going to stall himself out. He can't really do anything now. We have so much energy on him that we're just going to be able to really just come down, loop on him, shoot him again, and he's kind of dead. He's like almost entirely ignorable. You know what's going to happen is we get a pass on us from the 109, and instead of going for the Wildcat, we're just gonna transition to the 109, and this is where the cannon buff really makes a difference, especially in these 2v1 situations where you have to kill the guy as soon as possible to force it back into a 1v1. We missed the head on here, But in the good old days of Real Shatter, we wouldn't have taken that. But as he flies away here, we still hear the Wildcat. He's somewhere around us, but we're just gonna pretend he doesn't exist. But watch this. Watch how like reasonably good this damage is. This guy comes, he's out there, he gets hit once, wing falls off, he's gone, he's dead, and we get a transition straight back to the Wildcat. We only have 10 rounds left now. With the damage changes, the Japanese 20s, especially on the J2M2, aren't like they're not A&M3 levels of damage, or the fact you don't have 4 of them doesn't bump them up to that. But in all honesty, it feels I would rather have 2 of these cannons than 650 cals. Like that is how good it is. That is how good the performance of the plane is. Like this plane doesn't have to compensate for anything whatsoever. He gets hit, half of his elevator falls off. And the rest of our team's gonna come in finally and finish him off for us. We've only got machine gun ammo left. If our team wasn't here, we would still get this kill. But I mean, realistically, that's 6 kills in the same fly. That's 6 kills in 1 load of ammo, arguably 7. Like, is it a good change? Yes. Is it going to change in the future? Probably also yes. Like, I will be surprised if the Gaijin decides to keep damage up this high or to keep hit points this low. Like, whatever way you want to phrase it, we're probably going to see changes to damage of guns in the future. Like, it's inevitable. It's a cycle that happens all the time. Anyways, that's a beer thunder. Real Shatter's dead. Hooray.